born to a wealthy noble family in Spain. Francisco Coronado was the last sibling in his family and therefore not first in line for his parents' money. So, what do you do if you grow up rich, but you don't stand to get any of the family loot? Well, marry a lady from a rich family, of course. But Coronado wanted more. He craved not only riches, but glory. In the 1500s, stories of fortunes beyond belief floated back from the New World to Europe. Stories of adventures, stories of gold, stories of Spanish conquistadors. Men like Hernan Cortés, who conquered the Aztec Empire with a few hundred men in 1521, melting down tons of gold into Spanish coin worth billions. Men like Francisco Pizarro, who took down the mighty Inca Empire in 1532 with 168 men, emptying the Inca of gold and thousands of tons of silver. Who would be the next adventurer, the next explorer, to find glory and gold? Francisco Coronado hoped it would be him. To do it, he'd need some money. So he borrowed money from a friend and set out on an expedition of a lifetime. Coronado would head to the Americas, New Spain, and venture into uncharted territory and strike it rich, just like Cortés and just like Pizarro. Coronado hoped to find yet another Native American empire stocked with gold and silver. Not long after his arrival in New Spain, Coronado married a rich woman and became a governor of an area of New Spain called New Galicia. Now that's moving up fast. Things were all going according to plan. He soon caught wind of Native American stories about great treasures, cities of gold, even a fountain of youth. Now, I wonder why Native Americans would tell these stories. But Coronado would do better. He had heard Native American talk about not a city of gold, but 7 golden cities, the 7 cities of Cibola. With the help of a Native American guide, he headed north out of New Spain. Along the way, Coronado committed unspeakable atrocities against the native people he encountered, bringing violence and terror to village after village, or as he said, pueblo after pueblo. He would stop at nothing to find those golden cities. Oh, but he did stop at a huge canyon that he called Grande. That's right, Coronado and his band of conquistadors, conquerors from Spain, were the first Europeans to lay eyes on the Grand Canyon. His Native American guide led him from the Grand Canyon further north and into the Great Plains. It was there that Coronado saw nothing. Nothing but a sea of grass filled with bison poop. Oh, and bison. After traveling for months, Coronado finally figured it out. There were no 7 cities of gold. Hey, at least someone would eventually end up making some money from the fabled golden cities. Coronado was the first European to see the Great Plains of Kansas. But he didn't care about that. He had been tricked, duped, made a fool of. Filled with rage and embarrassment, Coronado had his Native American guide strangled to death, and he and his conquistadors headed back to New Spain in disgrace. They continued their bloody parade through the people they called the Pueblo, making sure the Pueblo people would never forget the name Francisco Coronado. And they haven't. Not long after returning to New Spain's capital, Mexico City, remember Tenochtitlan? Coronado was charged with crimes of cruelty against native peoples. It seems a Catholic Christian priest, Bartholomew de las Casas, had been complaining about the brutal, torturous, and murderous treatment of native people by Spaniards. In the name of God, of course. The Spanish government decided to make an example of Coronado. After a court case in which some of Coronado's own men testified that they had witnessed their disgraced leader butcher and kill the pueblo without hesitation, Coronado was found guilty of numerous crimes against Native Americans. What's the punishment for maiming and killing Native American children, women, and men? Coronado was removed from his position as governor and made to take a smaller job in an office in Mexico City. Yep, that's it. Oh, remember Bartholomew de las Casas? The priest who spoke out in order to help Native Americans? Well, he had a better idea. Enslave Africans and bring them to America to do the work. No one would listen to that one, would they? Coronado claimed the Southwest for Spain. Born Giovanni Cabot in Italy, John Cabot owed lots of people lots of money. Yes, he was broke, busted, and disgusted. He moved to Venice, Italy, but was still chased by debt collectors demanding that he pay back the money he borrowed. So, he moved again, this time out of Italy to Bristol, England, where he promptly changed his name to John Cabot. Ah, that will fool them. A fresh start. Like Christopher Columbus, John Cabot needed to get rich quick. So why not find that western sea route to Asia? Cabot got some English businessmen to loan him some money. Yep, back to borrowing. And they did just that. And once he got permission from King Henry VII in 1497, he was off to Asia. Or so he thought. On a small ship called the Matthew, Cabot and his crew of 18 men sailed a more northern route than Columbus had taken 5 years before. After battling through stormy weather, the crew ate dried peas and beans, maggot-infested hard biscuits, and when their water supply became stale, they gulped down and allotted 1 gallon of beer per day. For weeks, they swerved across the Atlantic Ocean. And finally, Cabot and his crew reached land, and some newly found land, which they called Newfoundland. And no, I didn't make that up. He spent a few hours only on shore and did most of his observing from the safety of the Matthew. Cabot was convinced he had found a faster way to Asia than Columbus had, and he had actually reached Canada. He returned to England and brought with him not gold, but 3 Inuit men and the promise to make England rich off Asian goods. You know, once he found them. Henry VII was impressed and allowed Cabot another expedition the following year. This time, John Cabot would take 5 ships. After they departed Bristol, England, in 1498, Cabot and his fleet disappeared over the horizon and were never heard from again. 3 years later, explorers met Native Americans who were in possession of an Italian sword and 2 Italian rings. Did these belong to John Cabot? Now on to the French. Fast forward to the 1600s. The French had begun to stake their claims on the New World. Samuel de Champlain, or Samuel de Champlain, received permission to explore and search for an ideal place to start a New World colony in the name of France. On his expeditions, Champlain created a bond with Native Americans in the area that is now called Eastern Canada. He agreed to help them fight a long-standing enemy of theirs known as the Iroquois. Remember them? In one battle, Champlain killed 2 Iroquois leaders and forced the Iroquois to retreat. But don't worry, the Iroquois would get their revenge with a European ally of their own soon enough. But that's a story for another unit. With the help of some Huron guides, Champlain explored the St. Lawrence River, which led him to become the first known European to set his gaze on the Great Lakes. Oui, these lakes look really great. I must come up with a great name for them. How about the Great Lakes, oui? While traveling in 1609, he established or started a fur trading post called Quebec. It was located along the St. Lawrence River's wide banks. Speaking of bank, the French made lots of money from the fur trade, and that French colony called Quebec, it played a huge part in this. Quebec remains a major economic center to this day. By paving the way for more French settlement in the New World, Samuel de Champlain is known as the father of New France. Samuel de Champlain established a French settlement called Quebec. Got it? Robert de LaSalle, yes, another Frenchman, explored for his king, King Louis XIV of France. Robert LaSalle was arrogant and ambitious, and considered himself one of the luckiest men alive. In 1669, LaSalle set out to find the Northwest Passage, a river that Europeans believed flowed through North America all the way to the Pacific Ocean. If you're wondering, wasn't Columbus looking for a waterway to the Pacific almost 200 years before? The answer is, yep. It would take 140 more years for non-Native Americans to figure out that a Northwest Passage, a river through North America, didn't exist. LaSalle explored and mapped the Great Lakes, set up some forts, and went back to France. Feeling lucky, LaSalle and his men returned to New France, in the New World, in 1679 and cruised the Mississippi River looking for this Northwest Passage. It was then that he claimed the entire Mississippi River Valley for France. All of the lands from the Appalachians to the east to the Rocky Mountains in the west, from Canada in the north to the Gulf of Mexico in the south, a huge tract of land. He named it Louisiana in honor of King Louis XIV. But still, no river flowing to the Pacific Ocean was found. After LaSalle returned to France for money and supplies, he was ready for one more trip to the New World, or New France, or Louisiana. On his 4 ships, he carried a group of soldiers and 200 settlers. If his luck held up, he would start a permanent settlement of his own. On this voyage, 3 of his 4 ships sank, taking most of the supplies with them. Crammed aboard the one remaining ship, many of his men certainly began asking the question that we all have heard or even said at least once in our lives. Are we there yet? But LaSalle's luck would continue to fade when, after a fight with his navigator, he missed the mouth of the Mississippi by some 200 miles west, landing near what is now Galveston, Texas. Well, landing is a generous term. His final ship ran aground and it too sank. Stranded, angry, immediately under attack from Native Americans, LaSalle decided they should simply walk back east to the Mississippi River. When LaSalle set out on foot, heading west, the wrong way, his men were convinced LaSalle had gone mad, lost his marbles, went bonkers, lost his mind. They had heard and seen and endured enough. They killed Robert LaSalle as he walked. After a few months, all of the crew and the would-be settlers had died. Robert LaSalle and his exploration had run out of luck for good. Robert LaSalle claimed the Mississippi River Valley for France. What? Were you expecting more?